you don't always think about advertising and the interplay between advertising and privacy. And it sounds like Mexican law has some nuances that may be somewhat unique. Welcome to another episode of A Little Privacy, Please. I'm Jason Kravitz, and with me, as always, is Jenny Holmes. Together, we lead Nixon Peabody's cybersecurity and privacy practice. Today, we have a very special guest, Verónica Siten Salgado, joining us. Verónica is a data privacy consultant and specialist with the Arochi Lindner firm in Mexico. So Verónica, set the stage for us and maybe just give us a general overview of the current Mexican framework for data protection.
Well, in Mexico, there are two data protection laws. One is addressed for the public sector, and the other one is addressed to the private sector. This law came into force in 2010, and it is known as the data protection law. It is supported by 8 principles and 2 duties. In addition, there is a document that states the rules to create, use, and implement the privacy notice in compliance with the local legal framework. It is called the Privacy Notice Guidelines. It is important to understand that the privacy notice must reflect the real operation and administration of our personal data within a company, which is to say how a data controller uses our personal information.
So Verónica, how does a data controller comply with these laws?
Okay, that's a good question. One of the obligations of the data controller is to make the privacy notice available to the data subjects prior to collecting any personal information or in the very first contact with them. The privacy notice must contain the data purposes, distinguishing between the primary and the secondary ones. And this document should also include a mechanism to object to the personal data processing for secondary purposes or meanings. No objection could be considered as a tacit consent. But if person objects to the processing of their personal info, the controller should add that person to an exclusion list. Objection is one of the ARCO rights, and it is related to the processing cessation of secondary purposes, plus the use of an exclusion list. The rest of the right is access, rectification, and cancellation. In addition to the objection right, the Federal Consumer Protection Office, Profeco, created the REPEP program, which is a federal and official exclusion list to avoid marketing and advertising calls.
So Verónica, shifting gears to advertising, Mexican law has, I know, some specific provisions that apply to companies that advertise to Mexican consumers. What are some of the best practices that they should be aware of, companies that are doing that?
There are 3 basic and useful tips. One of them is being aware of the privacy matters when designing a marketing or an advertising campaign. The second one is, of course, knowing the privacy notice of a company will allow to design content and strategies duly harmonized with the privacy policy of the company. And the third one is, in case of any question regarding privacy matters, please do not hesitate to contact privacy pros like you.
Most amazing destination in Mexico for vacation?
I think a real great state for visiting is Oaxaca. The capital is really pretty. The beaches are great. And the mountains, La Sierra Oaxaqueña is wow.
Jenny, that was a really interesting conversation we just had with Verónica. What was your takeaway?
I think it's interesting to see that Mexico is really focusing on individual rights, just like we're seeing across the world, and especially now in the United States. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the advertising front, you don't always think about advertising and the interplay between advertising and privacy. And it sounds like Mexican law has some nuances that may be somewhat unique. I guess my recommendation or advice is for any companies that are going to be advertising to consumers in Mexico, make sure you talk to your lawyers first, because there seem to be some pitfalls there.
That's going to do it for this episode of A Little Privacy, Please. Verónica, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Were you one of those people in law school that always sat in the front row in class?
No.
Okay.